Do you ever wonder how great leaders in the community make things happen? When they encounter new, unexpected challenges like a pandemic, how do they continue to successfully make an impact? Welcome to That Sounds Terrific, the podcast that connects you with these amazing people. Get insights on what they do to meet their goals, find out how you can help them in their mission, and learn their methods so you can be more successful at what you do. Welcome to That Sounds Terrific with host Nick Koziel.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Today with me is Branden Raczkowski of Roc City Greens, and we were just talking about how to pronounce names, and I have a Polish name, he has a Polish name, and I'm sure I screwed it up somehow, but welcome, and thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Nick. Appreciate it.
So, Branden, why don't you talk a little bit about what Roc City Greens is and sort of how it came to be and a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, 100%. So, Roc City Greens, as it stands today, is a small batch microgreens farm right here in Western New York, based out of Rochester, hence the name Roc City Greens. With the goal of expanding into other products as the business grows. Currently, right now, looking into the viability of a lettuce grow house too, because mostly my clients right now are restaurants, and it's something they use in high volumes. Just kind of makes sense. But so a little bit about my background. My degree is actually in biology, and I've always had a big affinity for growing plants, botany, learning more about the natural world. And I want to say, probably like 5 to 8 years ago, my wife and I took a trip down to Disney, and went to Epcot Center, and they've got a ride there called Living with the Land. And that's actually kind of like a personal inspiration for me as to why I started down the agriculture road. Just watching the advanced growing techniques, hydroponics, aeroponics, vertical farming techniques, fish farms, indoor farms, and that whole thing just kind of was like, wow, that's super sustainable. And it caused me to do even more research into what our food supplies look like. So that's kind of what got me down into Roc City Greens. And with a limited space, what kind of product lines could I offer the local food scene here in Rochester? And I arrived at the microgreens. So
yeah, and Branden, we've been talking for a number of weeks, probably months at this point, about the different, endeavors that you're doing. You're always seeming to have your hands in a lot of different projects on a variety of different levels. What I loved about Roc City Greens is that it's local, and I love supporting local whenever I can. But it's even so local, like, you really have that 45-minute to an hour delivery radius to make sure that everything stays fresh. And I remember you saying that because I was like, oh, I've got a lot of contacts here and here. And he's like, and you're like, you're a little bit out of like the range. Can you talk a little bit about like, why microgreens, what's the benefits, and, kind of how you foresee that, helping restaurants, local consumers?
yeah, so microgreens, by nature are basically the baby growth of a vegetable or an herb. Where you're harvesting them between 1 to 3 weeks of growth. So because of that, they are more nutrient dense than their adult counterparts. So up to 40 times more nutritious by volume, in fact. So, you think about a head of broccoli, you got this big head of broccoli, you can get almost the same vitamin count from a small handful of broccoli micros than you could get by eating a whole head, minus the fiber intake, obviously.
Right.
But nutritionally, they're a really good way of getting vitamins into your diet without, eating tons and tons of vegetables. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, and we have some friends in the background playing, it sounds like. That's usually me.
Yeah. I have 2 coworkers here.
Awesome.
Both of them covered in fur. I got my black lab rescue and a German Shepherd rescue from the SPCA and Lollipop Farms, respectively.
Awesome. So that's great. But when you were talking about the microgreens being a little bit more, dense in vitamins, is that because that's like at the beginning of their growing process? and that it takes those vitamins kind of away as it grows.
Yeah, exactly. So, just like you or I, we burn energy through a lot of our metabolic processes, growing and developing, moving around. Plants have their own metabolic processes that they have to use nutrition for as well. And the other thing too is a lot of the energy is contained within the seed. So,
Right.
yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And so when you're getting ready to harvest these things, like I know that some plants are able to kind of restart right from the root, and you're kind of harvesting the top and they grow again. Is that something that happens with like all of your microgreens, none of your microgreens, some of them? Does that matter? Do you have to replant every time?
I do replant every time. And in fact, because of my process, so, and I've mentioned to you that I spent 10 years in environmental health and safety compliance and food safety. So to me, following good GMPs, following food safety guidelines. So I'm actually HACCP certified too, and I still maintain that certification. But food safety is something that I do not cut corners on. So I sanitize all of my trays with food grade hydrogen peroxide, which is best practice. And once I harvest, all that root and dirt goes into compost. So no, I don't reharvest. You could do it with pea shoots, but you're not going to get the same product, and none of the other ones work.
Yeah,
So,
I was thinking that would probably be the possibility. And if why would you want to? Because again, you're kind of maybe limiting some of that vitamin count and stuff. But it's a good point for our listeners to understand, especially if they're thinking about using your service or ordering from you in some way, shape, or form. I thought it'd be important to kind of talk a little more about the product specifically. So, okay, what is the process, right? What from seed to green to someone's plate? Like, what's the the timeline, and how does that kind of work out? And are you also open to like supplying individuals? So like, I can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I do mostly restaurants right now, and that's usually because of ease of volume. But the process is, I grow in a vertical indoor environment. So I have tiered racking set up. I've got lights set up. Everything is indoors. Everything is controlled. The humidity, the lighting, the water intake, everything. I control that very well because they are indoors. Outdoors, you're kind of, subject to the elements. Because I'm doing that here, I'm not. Actually, would you mind if I just...
Yes, sure. You can pause on that. So Branden, can you tell me a little bit about your process kind of from seed to customer plate?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I'm an indoor farm. So everything I do is highly controlled. The humidity, the lighting, I've all got that pretty dialed in. So I grow using 10 by 20 trays, all natural dirt. No, nothing crazy. No pesticides, no fungicides. I don't need any of that stuff because again, I'm indoors. I've got fans running. I don't have to worry about the mold issues. So from seed, I sow the seed into the 10 by 20 trays that are filled with dirt. I stack them. I put another tray on top, put some weights down on top of them, and they germinate for a couple of days, usually 2 to 3 days, depending on the product. At that point, I will uncover the tray, unstack them, and put them on the racks with the lighting, and then they'll get watered, usually once per day. And depending on the type of product, it'll either get top watered or bottom watered. Something like sunflower shoots or pea shoots, anything like that. They can be top watered, which is your traditional, pouring water over the top of the plant.
Right.
Pretty much everything I do is bottom watered though, which means I put one of the trays inside a bigger tray that's filled with water so that the water goes directly into the dirt and you don't get any of the water over the top. Therefore, you don't have to worry about mildew or any of that kind of like scent or taste to it. It's just a much better way of watering. So yeah, so I do that and I let them grow. They basically just get watered regularly, and then whenever they're ready for harvest, I hand harvest them using a knife that I've sanitized in food grade hydrogen peroxide again, wiped off, and then I cut at the base. They then go into clamshells, which are those those takeaway plastic containers. They get stickered and labeled, and then they're ready for delivery. Keep it simple, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. And so as far as delivery goes, we talked a little bit earlier about like, your delivery radius. So can you talk a little bit about why that is and, what the radius is? So our listeners might be able to reach out.
Yeah. So I keep it strictly to the greater Rochester area. I'm not sure exactly what the mileage is on that, but the point is I like to preserve peak freshness of my product. A lot of microgreens really only last on the shelf like a week, maybe 2 weeks. So it's not something you're going to find in your grocery store like Wegmans or something like that, quite frankly, because they don't have the shelf life. One of my biggest gripes with the food, I guess, channel you want to talk about in our country. So let's just say a crop is grown in California on a giant farm, right? So it'll get harvested, that'll get bought up by a wholesaler, and then it'll get transported to a cold storage facility where it'll sit for a few months to then be bought up or sold to a retail chain, where it'll then sit on the shelf until the consumer eventually buys it, brings it into their fridge. And the timeline between when it's grown and when it's eaten could be months, so you're not going to see something like this in your regular grocery store, simply because they don't last that long.
Right.
Again, part of the reason why I got into this is, how I feel about how food should be, which is a more of a focus on local ag, farm to table type stuff. And that's why I only deliver within the greater Rochester area.
No, it's a good point to make. I mean, when you think about food and you're going in, to a grocery, especially like things like cucumbers, they have that like waxy coating, like that is added to like preserve freshness. It's funny, to me, because like, we grow outside, right? So on our little hobby farm that we have going on. So you get cucumbers and they last a long time, but it seems like no matter what I do with the supermarket ones, they're like almost rotting, 2 days later, right? So it's an interesting point that you make about how long they're storing them, and then they're going to like maybe 2 other areas exchanging sort of hands, whereas yours is really product to site. And I think, in this current, atmosphere that we're in, environment that we're in, where, you have people that are really worried about COVID and, how many people have actually, touched their food, right? Coming from a supermarket. This is literally like you harvesting it and bringing it to the restaurant and being prepared, and it's on your plate. So I love that. And then the other thing that I just kind of thought of, being that I've worked with some colleges and some other areas that do a lot of research in, growing and recycling and all those different things. I think it's important that we also think about the amount of energy that maybe you're utilizing indoors, and like what that might cost as far as those clamshells and stuff. So can you talk a little bit about like, the sustainability portion as well? Because I know that's something that's really important to you too.
Yeah, it is. And I'm always looking to get better with that as it stands now. Obviously, I'm not a huge business. It's just I'm the owner operator of Roc City Greens. So it's very local at this point. As far as the sustainability goes, that is part of the reason why I haven't done like retail direct yet, because I'm very conscious of the amount of fuel that I'm going to spend, if I'm driving it door to door, versus having a pickup site. I haven't really gotten that side of the business going. But because, I can offer a fairly substantial volume to a restaurant where I'm not trucking it all over the place. I'm trying to cut down on fuel costs that way. Clamshells, always looking for a better, more sustainable packaging option. There's not a lot out there that I've found yet, but again, always open to better options there too. But everything, all my waste, it does get composted. So, and I've used community composting services, have my own compost going at home. So that's part of it too. And yes, going indoors, I do have lights going, right? So if I was growing outside, I wouldn't be using that energy. However, I do use high efficiency LED bulbs to cut down on my electrical usage. And I also use about 90% less water than traditional agriculture.
Yeah, I knew there was some give and take with the indoor growing, and that it keeps on getting more and more efficient. Do you have like timers on the lights or anything like that?
Yes. Yeah,
what
I
kind
do.
of technology do you use?
Yep. I do have timers. I only apply heat when it's needed. I don't, anything that I don't need to do, it doesn't, I don't do it. And then anything that I can do by hand rather than using like electrical or energy like that, I do.
Awesome.
So it's still a pretty boutique shop at this point, and
Right.
not looking to large scale it.
Yeah. There are some businesses and even small businesses like yourself that are have that challenge, right, with the delivery of food and crops. And it's funny, my dad just actually sent me 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I hadn't even seen it, but they have that new Ford Maverick. It's like a pickup truck, which would be cool and ideal maybe for you to have all your product in there, but it's also got very good miles to the gallon, because it's the first real hybrid truck. I have a feeling, I haven't seen one in person yet, and I'm worried because I'm sort of a big guy, and I'm I probably look really tiny in there, because every commercial I've seen has been maybe with a woman getting in and out of the truck or something like that, and you can't really figure out how big is that, is it as small as my Prius that I drive around, but it just has a bed that's extended out. But it's interesting, and I think you are doing some great things, first of all, to kind of consider all that stuff from the start, and not have to be when you get larger to go, okay, now how do we be more sustainable, right? So I know we've personally talked about different hopes and dreams of where you're going to go with this organization, but I guess what's your 5-year plan, your ultimate dream, all right?
Yeah.
What do you want this to look like?
Yeah. So ultimate dream for me would be to bring something like what I've seen in Disney, which is that type of super exciting, agricultural experience here to Rochester, where it would be a destination for people to come see how we're doing things and get people excited about local agriculture and what can be done. Getting people to just really even acknowledge where their food comes from and the impact that it has on the environment and the supply chains. So I think, even getting involved with school districts, once I have that established where, the kids can come and learn, maybe even offer internships to people from disadvantaged communities, so that they can work, in that field, and learn more about where their food comes from as well.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about, again, strategies for you to, bring in some, maybe like you said, interns or people. So are you looking for, support as far as investors and things like that?
Yeah. In fact, I'm looking into other avenues right now, because phase 2 of Roc City Greens is to have a larger indoor grow facility that encompasses not just the microgreens, but other products that people are using regularly. So, lettuces, cucumbers, tomatoes, would be phase 2, something that's, that's highly consumable.
Right.
And rather than getting them from, trucked in from California or, somewhere else, I mention them a lot because they have a lot of year-round growing opportunities.
Right.
Having it right here in the heart of Rochester would be that goal for phase 2.
Awesome. So We talked a little bit about like, that you got your hands in so many other different areas, right? Is there anything that you are doing with Roc City Greens where you're sort of partnering with other organizations or people that you want to mention?
Yeah. So, uh, ultimately too, and I sit on the board of directors for a technology, software development company called Innovia Collabs.
Mhm.
And, ultimately any type of automation work, any type of app development, web apps that I need for the business, ultimately because of the great people that I work with there, we have the capabilities to build them.
Mhm.
And, uh, one of the things that I envision too, is to give more support to other local agriculture and not just plants, but also, our meat infrastructure too. Because if there's one of the things that I've noticed back when COVID hit, you saw these big meat plantations get exposed for just how vulnerable they are.
Mhm.
One major pandemic like that, and our whole meat supply chain too
Right.
is decimated, right? And that shouldn't be the case. And one of those big problems is access to meat processing for small farmers that are doing things ethically, sustainably.
Right.
They just don't have the infrastructure to process up to USDA code
Right.
right on their own farms. So getting them infrastructure to do that at more local, USDA
Mhm.
authorized facilities would be another big thing I'd like to help out with. And then also allowing farmers to sell at retail, right? And so the one of the things that they struggle with is, they're getting paid pennies on the dollar for what you purchase at the supermarket. That $2, $3 head of lettuce you're getting off the shelf at the supermarket, they probably got 5 cents for, or who knows what it was.
Right. No, and I think you bring up again some important points. I know we talked about some of this before, and just for the benefit of the listener, I think it's great that you're opening up like sort of a local area food supply source that can be, produced year round. Because, again, another effect of the pandemic was closing down the lanes for resources and food and all sorts of other products and things that people need every day. And there's that concern, if I truck something from California into New York, what is that affecting, like as far as other communities where that truck may stop, or what is it affecting with the food being handled from a different location? So if we have a whole bunch of Roc City Green satellite areas, like, you still have local food. I mean, it won't be enough to cover everybody, but if you have more of those like kind of micro communities, you're keeping everything more contained in an ecosystem that might benefit if we ever go into like a full out pandemic again. um so have you thought about expanding this idea into other cities? I know phase two you were just talking about. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think long term that could be something that I end up doing. Once once things get a little bigger.
Right.
Again, 5-year plan you mentioned. We'll be exposed. Getting into different product lines. But yeah, I could see even maybe 10, 15 years down the line. Going national if
Mhm.
that's in the cards. And offering maybe a support through either technology so that other people can do it themselves.
Mhm.
It could look like maybe home growing solutions. I haven't completely formulated what that'll look like yet.
Right.
But really the goal is to provide, local access to local, you know, homegrown, farm grown products that
Right.
are ethically and sustainably sourced, that are good for you and good for the environment.
No, I think that that's awesome. And you might even have some like Rochester franchisee type things going where you're headquartered in Rochester, but you could do like a franchise out in some other cities, and they supply the technology, supply the product and trademark type stuff. And they'll grow from there, and you're getting income in that way as well. So I think that's great. Brandon, is there anything that I haven't touched on that you would love to share?
As far as Roc City Greens is concerned,
Yeah, or really anything. I mean, I think you gave our audience a really good overview of like what you're doing and how it can benefit them. Definitely going to put in like the show notes, like all your contact information. And so like, anyone that's an investor or anybody that's looking for fresh microgreens for their restaurant, or, any individual that might want to learn more, can reach right out to you. So we'll definitely have that. But what's the best way to reach you currently, just so we can get it in the recording itself?
Yeah, I'm always just a phone call or a text away, but email is good. You can, add me on LinkedIn. You can add me on, you can add me on Facebook. I'm not shy, whatever. I'm the only Branden Raczkowski out there. So you look me up, you're not going to have that hard of a time to find me.
Awesome. And so I'll definitely put those in the show notes. But yeah, is there anything else that you want to share about Roc City Greens, or some of the exciting things that you're doing that make a positive impact in the community?
Yeah, actually, even aside from Roc City Greens, so I've spent the last 10 years in environmental health and safety compliance. And one of the things that I've noticed in that field, so obviously with the goal of trying to prevent injuries among the employed folks that are out there, is that people who were in that profession or in that profession don't really have a lot of resources as far as networking with fellow professionals, getting feedback, opinions, advice. So myself and actually the founder of Safety Nights, David Janicki, has built a platform for like-minded safety professionals out there to use, and really just have that network of people to correspond with. So Safety Nights is something I've been working on with him over the past year. And we've really been able to reach a lot of different safety professionals, and ultimately, I think, really help keep a lot of people safer. We're up to 2,100 users now over the past year. So it's kind of exciting.
Cool.
It's catching on. People are using it and enjoying it. So
no, I think we, again, like, you're doing some really terrific things. And it all seems to center around, health and safety anyway. Like, everything you seem to be passionate about is focusing on how to make a healthier community. And that was a lot of the reasons I wanted to have you on. That sounds terrific. So I want to thank you, Branden, for being on the show. I urge my listeners to kind of check out and connect with Branden, and definitely Roc City Greens. And so thank you, Branden. And if there's anything else you want to mention, now's the time to do it.
No, thanks for having me, Nick. I appreciate it. And go Bills.
Go Bills. Bills Mafia all the way, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of That Sounds Terrific. Don't forget to check out the show notes and our website at thatsoundsterrific.com to find the contact information and the best ways to volunteer with the organizations that we feature. If you know someone that is doing terrific things and think they should be featured in a future episode, be sure to email us their name, contact info, and short description of what they're doing at thatsoundsterrific@gmail.com. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and give us some social media love by liking our Facebook page, That Sounds Terrific. Follow us on Twitter at Sounds Terrific 2 and Instagram at Sounds Terrific. We love hearing your feedback on how to make our show sound even more terrific. Till next time.